Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synchronous versus Asynchronous using Kaltura and Zoom in Canvas. We are here today to give you a fire hose of information about how you can use Kaltura and Zoom in Canvas for your courses. Know that even though we are sending you a fire hose of information, you can ask questions and engage in the chat, and we will have follow-up resources, and there are resources out there for you if we can't answer all of your questions or highlight everything in detail of what you're supposed to do or what you're going to try to do. My name is Sarah Shane, and I'm an instructional designer and work for Academic Technology Support Services, and my partner in crime here today is Susan Tade, and she also works for ATSS, and we are bringing you this information. So today we're going to start off talking a little bit about some definitions about synchronous, asynchronous, and high flex. We're going to also talk about tools and the considerations for it. So Zoom is typically used more for synchronous, Kaltura is typically used more for asynchronous, and then have a brief conversation about hybrid, high flex, that these days continuously shifting of how you are planning your courses. And so some of you may have thought you were planning your courses a certain way, and then there's been a new recommendation and Regent's decision to do things a little bit different if you thought you were going to be doing things face-to-face for a few weeks. I know that many of us have been engaging and struggling with what that decision means. I think we're planning for doing things online later in the semester, and now we're doing things a little bit earlier. So one of the things I do want to mention, and I see that people are doing this, we had asked at the very beginning for those of you that are joining right now, to feel free to introduce yourself and to put in where you're from, or like what department you're a part of, and if there's something that specifically brought you here. So one of the ways that you could do that if you don't know Zoom and are new to Zoom is that when you mouse over the screen where you can hopefully see the presentation and me talking, you should see a chat panel. You should also see a participants panel. So you can open both of those. When I do that the very first time I'm in a meeting, it discombobulates and it puts them on top of each other. But if I press the escape key when I'm touching when my mouse is on the main screen, it brings it all together. So I can have what's being presented, then I can see the chat and the panel participant in the side. And so we are asking that you feel free to put chat questions if you have questions. However, if you find the chat overwhelming and hard to follow, know that we will bring forward chat questions into the session. We will also send a follow-up email with hopefully answers to some of that as well. So use the chat panel if that's how it helps you stay engaged. Use that all you can. If it's overwhelming to you, know that you don't have to. The other thing is if it's not accessible to you or overwhelming to you and you would rather verbally ask your question, you can do that too. We just ask that you raise your hand. And to raise your hand, that's where you use the participants panel. So if you click on participants panel, you will see the little raise hand and you press that and we see your hand pop up. And that's where Susan and I will be monitoring that. We also have live captions going on at the bottom. If you find that distracting, there is a way you can click on the transcript or live captions and you can hide that. Live transcript is what it's called. And you can hide the subtitles, I think is what it says, so it doesn't show up. And that's just for you. You're not hiding it for everybody else, that's just for you. But if you like that and it helps you stay engaged, please keep that on. All right, we're gonna get into our content here today. So our definitions as we go into this, many of you may know this, but just covering our bases here, that synchronous is considered interactions between an instructor and a student, and it's taking place at the same time is what's happening. Basically what you're seeing right now, we are in a synchronous session. Of course, unless you're watching this after we've recorded it and then send it out, then you're gonna be watching it asynchronously. So you're watching something that happens synchronously with a group of people, but you will be watching it asynchronously. And so that's when students complete the course activities at their own pace, but usually within a time limit of a course. So, you recorded this on Monday, not everybody could be in your class. You got it set up and sent out on Tuesday and you expect students to watch it by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever that is. That may be part of your asynchronous plan to support students as they are able or not able to attend your class synchronously. And when I say class, that's probably a Zoom class that's going to be happening these days. And then hybrid high flex, as I was describing all this, this is kind of what I was describing was getting into more hybrid high flex. And that's where your learning sequences are both synchronous and asynchronous. And so you're making plans to be flexible, that you know some students are going to be able to join you synchronously for Zoom. Others, their internet's going to go out. They're taking care of their little sibling who needs to get on, take their courses, whatever it may be. And so they won't be able to attend face-to-face synchronously, or Zoom or face-to-face physically, and so they need to attend remotely and asynchronously, and sort of having plans around that. And we will briefly touch on those definitions. But we know going into this fall, many of you a while back made some choices about what type of course you were going to be teaching, that there were some decisions about that. And so just curious about who we have here today. I'm launching a poll, and it's asking, which teaching format did you choose for your fall 2020 class? We know that may have changed as of yesterday, but feel free to answer this if you decided to do online. Was the completely online typically synchronous? I believe remote is most things will be online, but you'll do some synchronous sessions as we're recording here today. And blended is a little bit of both. So I see people in there actively answering that question. Thank you for doing that. As you continue to do that, I'm just going to mention that really what we're going to get into here today is looking at synchronous versus asynchronous. And typically Zoom, as we are right now, is part of the synchronous portion. And once you've done your Zoom session, if you're recording it, as we are here today, it will turn into asynchronous if you're sharing that with your students. And the best way that we're recommending to do that is to do that with Kaltura. All right, I've seen the answering of this poll slow down, so I'm going to end it, and then I'm going to share the results with everyone. So you can see that most people here today are doing it entirely online, so you may be more interested in the Kaltura aspect, but many of you are also interested in this remote aspect of things, of like what we're doing right now. And so hopefully you'll find, some of you will find all of this, or some of you will find at least parts of this, if not all of it, useful today too. And I just want to remind you again, feel free. I feel like I'm going through this kind of fast because this is going to get into a little bit of fire hose of information. Feel free to pose questions in the chat channel, and if we can't get to it, we do follow up with you too. So let's talk about Zoom. I'm going to talk about Zoom, and Susan will talk to you about Kaltura. So I'm going to keep going here. We have many use cases for Zoom. There's all the course organization, there's content delivery, there's collaboration group work, there's student evaluations that may all happen at one time. It may happen separately, but it's everything from the course organization. We're thinking more about weekly check-in sessions, advising sessions, individual consultations, office hours. Your content delivery is obviously lecture and presentations. You could have guest speakers. You could even have a panel. You could have poster sessions, an exam preparation session, and so on. And then groups and collaborations. I know a lot of you will start off like we're doing now with the lecture type and then break into groups. And so you could do whole class, small groups, you could do group presentations, you could have role playing, team building, all kinds of stuff that you can do with Zoom. And then obviously student evaluations, everything from interviews to oral exams to language proficiency tests, mastery of skills and watching them do something or practice something. So there's lots of ways that you can use Zoom synchronously. But what do students need to have to do this? Obviously, we would love it if they have laptops or desktop computers where they can interact and be able to have maybe more than one window open. But at a minimum, they do need to have a phone or a tablet of some sort. Ideally, they would also have headphones on, which just remind me I don't have mine on. So please chime in if I start to come in and out, because I know that can happen sometime when my computer starts to think too hard during Zoom sessions. And then a camera. A camera is ideal because we love it, and I'd encourage you now, if you would like to turn on your camera and to practice having a camera on, please feel free to turn that on. We love to be able to see people. That being said, we know that there are reasons students don't necessarily have cameras embedded in their computers or whatever. And there's reasons that students feel uncomfortable with turning on cameras. As most of you here today don't have your camera on, you can attest to there's reasons why you're not turning on your cameras. And so just wanting to make those, you aware and thinking a little bit about what your expectations are around cameras, and that you may hope for some things, but understand that not all students will be able to. turn them on, in part because we're going to get into that a little bit about using Zoom and the limitations there. Exactly, Kevin. The Zoom is very dependent on high-speed connections, and so some students don't have enough bandwidth. Students or faculty, instructors, staff don't have enough bandwidth to turn on the video because the video makes the computer render a little bit more, and it can make it become disconnected. Zoom does collect data about who joins a meeting, but it does not track what every participant does within a Zoom meeting. So could easily join a Zoom meeting, shut off your camera, and disconnect. You can mute it. You know, we would never know whether you're participating or students are participating. So there's some limitations with that. And then the other thing is an instructor needs to manage multiple roles. You are both a teacher and a host and a facilitator. For us at ATSS, we always do these with 2 people, in part because it's hard to keep your head about what you're supposed to be presenting and follow the chat. Sometimes you can do that, and sometimes it's hard to do that. And so we always have a second person sort of as a backup, looking into things, looking questions, ready to share resources, whatever it may be. You as an instructor, you may not have that choice. You may have TAs, and that's perfect. That's great that they can do that, but you may not have that choice. So just one of the things to think about, how are you going to handle that? You're going to ask students to step up and rotate sort of that role of monitoring the chat and asking you questions, or how are you going to practice doing that? So just some things to think about in terms of using Zoom. All right, and then in terms of engaging with students in Zoom, there's many things that you can do. There is the chat. As I look over where I'm actually sharing this is on a different screen, so I'm looking away, but still part of this. Look at that fun stuff, how it scrolls up right over that. So the chat panel is one of the things, obviously, as we've said, we have encourage people to do in the chat panel. And one thing I will say, if you're asking questions in the chat panel, make sure you chat to everyone. That way everyone can see your question and other questions, unless you have a real private question. But most of the time, we need to be able to see who all's asking questions, so that our, like right now, Susan could help answer the questions. So there's a chat where you can engage in. You can choose who can and how people can engage. You can do it where they can't engage privately and they only have to ask everyone questions. And then the participant panel. I don't know if you've noticed, those of you that turn that on, there is a yes and a no question. So you could ask questions of students. And so if you have that on, you could do the little yes right now that you found the participant panel. Of course, if you haven't found the participant panel, you wouldn't be able to check the no box, but I see some yeses popping up. I can see there's 6 yeses, 7, 8, it's growing now. So you can use that as a way to sort of engage with students. And there's also the go faster, go slower. And I had a question of what happens if you get people saying go faster and go slower. How are you going to deal with that? Just keep doing what you're doing. And then there's also polls. We had a poll already. Only hosts and co-hosts can do that, can send polls out. And then there's breakout rooms. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail about some of these things. There is a session later this week on Thursday on using Synchronous, using Zoom, Synchronous, facilitating synchronous engagement in Zoom sessions. That is later this week. If you join that, you'll see me, or maybe you've joined it before. Where we talk a little bit more about diving into sort of synchronous Zoom sessions. But for now, I'm going to keep going a little bit more about when you are hosting a session and you are leading your students in things, you will want to know about the security panel. The security panel is one of the things that shows up at the bottom when you're a host or a co-host. And in there, you are able to lock the meeting so nobody else can join. You can enable a waiting room. You can allow participants to share their screen if they can't. You can turn on and off the chat. You can allow people to rename themselves or unmute themselves. So you have some controls over how you do that. We bring this up in part because the Zoom bombing was a real concern sort of as we went into Zoom and emergency teaching last semester. And so this was one of the ways that you could deal with things as you could remove people. So that's the remove, that shows up in the participant panel too. And then you would lock the meeting and they can't get back in. That also means that if a student loses internet connection and gets kicked out, they also can't join. So that's partly where the enable waiting room could be useful. And then, yeah, okay, keep going with the security thing. So Zoom and Canvas, let's switch over a little bit. That's just a brief highlight of what you can do in Zoom. Again, there are more in-depth resources out there that we can share with you about using Zoom and all of the controls at the bottom that you see and different things with that. But we're gonna focus a little bit about Zoom and Canvas. And so, you can enable Zoom in your Canvas site. So you can see this here. This is an example of a course navigation. It does not show up initially in your course site. You have to turn that on. And so you turn that on by going to Settings. And then in Settings, there's a navigation tab. And in that navigation tab, you're searching for the bottom for Zoom. If you're part of the medical school, you want Zoom in BAA, because that's how your students will be able to engage with you. But Zoom is how you can turn that on. And so you can activate Zoom in the Canvas course on the course navigations. And that allows students, if you're setting up your course for all of you doing the remote teaching or blended teaching, that you're gonna have live sessions, or even if your office hours are this way, you probably wanna do this and get that turned on, because students can just go right to Zoom and see a listing of all of the courses that are out there. And so Zoom meetings made within Canvas are available within the course calendar. The next screenshot will show this. And Zoom meetings that are recorded can be uploaded to Kaltura and shared within Canvas. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So again, this is where Zoom's in the session. And once you click on Zoom or students click on Zoom, they can see upcoming meetings, previous meetings. There's a personal meeting room where you can set something up, and if you've recorded to the cloud, and you can schedule meetings right from here. Right from within Canvas is where you can schedule your meetings. All of those are going to show up nicely in the student's calendar. I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in a little bit. But first I'm going to pause and see, Susan, if we had any questions coming in that I should call out here.
There was a question about how many co-hosts you can have, and I think that's a really good question, because technically you can have, I think it is unlimited. We've had up to 20.
Yeah. I was in a meeting with 150 people. It was a diversity informal community practice where they made everyone a co-host so that people can move in and out of breakout sessions that they did. I would be a little nervous about doing that in a student if you have a large class, doing that in the students. You can have one student as a co-host that can shut the whole meeting down. But you can make a lot of co-hosts. You could make your whole class co-hosts if you want them, so they can move in and out between breakout rooms.
And there was also a question about how to create polls, and I did put a knowledge article in there on how to do that.
Great, yep. So once you schedule a meeting in Canvas, you can go to that meeting. Usually there's an edit button. Oh, I don't think I was the one who created this. There's an edit button. You could go in and you have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's a little line that has polls in there, and you can create polls then for your sessions. You can also do that in zoom.umn.edu. We'll bring up the meetings that you've set up, and so that will that's where you can find the polls. For things you can also get right into the session and create a poll automatically. I could create a poll on the fly right now if I wanted to too, but not going to do that. And Laura, again, for Canvas, where in Zoom do you access Canvas? The screenshot cut off a little bit, but if you go all the way down to the bottom of your course navigation to Settings, you have to go to Settings, and then there's a tab that's called, here, I'll probably even show you in a course here. How do I get back to my course? You could go to Settings, then there's a navigation tab, and then in the navigation tab, you have to enable that. I'm not actually gonna do that because Canvas is running really slow for me today. And then that's where you enable it and it'll turn on. Great. All right. Then what I was just showing you in the calendar view, we'll get to that. So office hours. One of the suggestions for office hours is you can set this up in the calendar within a Canvas. So this screenshot here is showing you how you can create an appointment group. And so when you go to the calendar, you would want to turn on your specific calendar, but you can create an appointment group. And again, everything's running slow for me today. So luckily we have this screenshot that when you set this up, you can say office hours, it's going to be online, which class is this for? And you can put in time ranges. So I think initially we put in 1 to 2:20 and then said 20-minute slots and press go. And it creates all these 20-minute slots automatically. as soon as you do that. And then you can say limit each slot to 1 user. You could say, I'm fine with 3 people coming in. I'm fine with 5 people coming in. And you know, there's these different options in here. And then the big thing is to, when you're adding this, add your personal Zoom or whatever Zoom session that you're going to do for your office hours. You can add that link, and that's going to show up on the Canvas calendar for students. So yeah, this is appointment groups. One of the ways that you can set up office hours is our suggestion for this. If you're doing class sessions, that's where we say go back and use this to schedule a class session. You can also set up office hours this way too, but this is a lot easier if you want 20-minute time slots rather than going in here and scheduling one meeting after another of 20-minute time slots. It would take a lot longer from your Canvas Zoom than it would be from setting up, using Canvas's capabilities to set up appointment slots and then just putting your link down in here. Questions about that? What I am showing you here is the office hours and calendars. So if you've created office hours using the feature within the calendar, this is the link that you can set up, and this is how students access it. So students really like being able to go to the calendar and being like, okay, I know I have a Zoom session today, rather than going through the long list that I see in my Zoom list. Some go there, some go to the calendar here, and they're like, oh, on the 10th, here it is, and they just press their link, and magically, there they are in your class.
Sarah, there's a really good question here, and I am not sure of the answer. Is there a way to chat with people that are in the waiting room? I don't think there is.
I don't know that answer either.
So Ryan, I'm gonna kind of reach out to our Zoom admins and find that answer out. I've also sent in Jen's question about capacity. We have not had any issues with Zoom going down that I am aware of, but I don't believe there is a separate University of Minnesota server for Zoom, just so you know. But I do think that there is an agreement that it needs to be up and running, and for under certain areas. And so I've got that email into them, and I'm going to find out the answer. So thank you.
Although some of you may have experienced some issues yesterday, Monday. There was an issue with Zoom in terms of being able to get to Zoom meetings on the calendar, and I'm pulling something over here. You could, and I can't join a meeting because I'm in a Zoom meeting right here, but I couldn't get into a meeting from the calendar link that was out there. And so I had to press join, and in the calendar invite was a passcode. And so I had to press join here, enter that passcode, and then I was able to join. So there was some disconnect that happened. It's been fixed. But that is one of the ways that is recommended, is that people come and log in. And this is if you're doing breakout rooms or pre-assigned breakout rooms for your class. You want students to, sort of have the app or zoom.umn and .edu and sign in so that they are actually logged in and they are able to then join a meeting as their authenticated U of M person or self. That's really what that is.
The other question that I would like to address is Anne Marie's question about the Zoom tab that's in their Canvas page, asking if it automatically goes to that person who's authenticated Zoom's page. In Canvas, those Zoom links are only for the course. And so while you have other Zoom meetings that you may have set up in the Zoom web portal, those will not populate into that course list. So it's only the Zoom sessions associated with the course. And I hope that addresses your question. Go ahead, Sarah, I'm sorry.
And then I'm seeing Fernando's question here. Why is it not recommended to create the class meetings in Canvas the same way as the office hours? You can. What we were just showing you here is that this appointment group, if you're setting up appointment groups for students and they're 20 minutes at a time, it's a lot easier to go in here and you just say from 1 to 2:20, I'm doing 20-minute slots, and you press go, and it creates those 20-minute slots for you that will show up on your calendar and students' calendars, and they can sign up for it. So there's something really nice about that happens in Canvas. You can set it up this way if you want to and have different sessions for students. They just can't sign up for it the same way. It will show up to everybody. This allows you to have students actually sign up for those sessions, is the difference between the two. Oh, and thank you for calling out the d.umn.edu, that may be a difference there in getting into things. All right. So using Zoom, some quick tips here. Record meetings to the local computer. We're suggesting recording it to the local computer for a number of reasons. One, we will run out of Zoom space if everybody records to the cloud. For another, how it records and what records is different from the cloud versus to your local settings. And I'm forgetting which does which when you record and have breakout rooms. And then also, one of the suggestions we have is if you're trying to record your hour-long session or 2-hour-long session or whatever it may be, that you may think about how to use Zoom to chunk videos for your Canvas course site. So you're not just putting the whole hour things and students have to scroll through that or fast forward or, try to figure out how they can do all of that, that there are ways that you can chunk pieces and topics. And so like, for instance, for us, we could do, the first 10 minutes of when we did introductions would be a chunking, and then now talking about Zoom would be another chunking, and we're about to get to Kaltura, and that would be another chunk of things, or ways to sort of think about how students can hone in on the topics that you're trying to address. And then make sure to end the meeting, because when you end the meeting, that starts the file processing. If you just leave, then that does something different than if you end the meeting, it starts that processing. And so you're going to need some time for Zoom to do that processing, and then you're going to need some time to allow that to upload to Kaltura after it's processed on your computer too. And then finally, Susan's going to go sort of show this a little bit more, but once you've recorded a Zoom session, if you've been doing this for your class, you record a Zoom session, you can upload that to your course site. So students can have access to it anywhere that you're going to have a page where you can edit. So it can be pages, assignments, discussions, announcements, whatever it can be. This little embed Kaltura media is where you would do that. I would recommend first uploading it to Kaltura, and Susan's going to go through how you upload a video to Kaltura. And once it's uploaded to Kaltura, then you can come in here and you can embed that video right into Canvas. All right, so that is concluding the Zoom portion of this, and I want to pause a moment to see if there's any questions about Zoom in Canvas.
And while people are thinking about that, I want to there were a lot of questions, Sarah, and so I think we tried to address them all. But if we did not, we will be sending a follow-up email addressing all of the questions. So make sure that, so we will send that to you, but I'll let Sarah take a look through there to see if there are any more questions that she can address. But there's a lot of information and there's a lot going on. So feel free to, and yes, Ryan, cloud recording is definitely discouraged. It doesn't mean you can't do it. I'll be honest with you, although if you're in the health sciences, you cannot. But because of the fact that we are going to reach capacity very quickly. And the reason I want to talk to you about Kaltura is because there's unlimited space in Kaltura for you to store media. Sarah, if you could stop sharing your screen and I will start sharing my screen.
Yes.
And so, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, one of the things I want to do a shameless plug out there for the people sort of asking about the practicing. I did include a link in there for the session that's coming up Thursday for facilitating student engagement and synchronous sessions. We go into a lot more details of what you can do in Zoom while you're facilitating a session. And then also there is, I'm going to try to find it, there are in Training Hub, there is some practice sessions for Zoom meetings. There's also a Canvas clinic coming up that you may be able to try to do some of that practice stuff too, that the training group, I think, is willing to go and do practice meetings with people. I would also say talk to your colleagues. You may not be the only one that's a little nervous about this, and you can kind of do the back and forth of setting up and practicing with Zoom.
There's a couple of really good questions in here about practice recordings, and you can certainly do that. And Anne Marie's question about you can certainly just use Zoom to record your lecture. You don't have to have anyone in the room when you're doing it. You could do it recording it locally, sharing your screen and your video. So, and I'm going to show you how to do that in Kaltura. So you could do it in either environment.
Yeah. But you don't have to. You don't have to use Zoom to record a video. You can use Kaltura to record a video if you're doing that asynchronously, and that's what Susan's going to do. You could also use Screencast-O-Matic to record a video and then upload it to Kaltura. Like, you have some choices of things to do. You don't have to use Zoom. We were just going over Zoom because we know a lot of people are doing blended, the remote teaching, and so just wanted to have that access out there.
Okay, with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I want to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. So Sarah, I am going to this screen right now, and you should be seeing the presentation file, correct?
Yes, we are. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to talk about asynchronous, and we're going to talk about Kaltura. And what do we mean by this? Basically, you know, by right now in this very challenging time, it's very challenging for everybody to be in the same place at the same time. And by using asynchronous activities in your Canvas course site, you can actually give the students the flexibility that they need by doing activities on their own time. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't set dates and activities and parameters around the assignments. It's just that you're not so locked into an exact time like we are locked into this time right now. So the point is that students get to learn the same material, but just at different times and different locations. And just so you know, when I look over here, I'm looking at my presentation, and when I look here, I'm looking at you. So I often like to tell my students that, because I don't want people to be offended by the fact that I'm turning my head and looking away. So my presentation file is over here, and it's what I'm sharing with you. But today what we're going to talk about is Kaltura as the tool to create that asynchronous environment within your Canvas course site. And the great thing is it's integrated right in Canvas, and it's a storage platform, a hosting platform, a recording platform. So all of those things are things that you can do within Kaltura. And so, you know, one of the most obvious things we talk about when we're creating content is we're going to deliver a lecture. We're going to deliver content. We want to record that lecture, and we actually want to share that with our students. So I'm going to show you what that can look like. But I want to know from you. I wanted you to put a yes or no. I'm going to clear the responses in our participant panel, and I'd like to know how many of you actually have pre-recorded videos and shared them with your students. You can click yes or no in the participant panel. Then we have a good idea of who's done this before and who hasn't. So it's just a good idea for us to have that. And now I'm getting a count. So what's really great is if you're using your Zoom, you can see, oh, right now I only have 4 people that have recorded and 20 that have not recorded. So let's talk about how you can do those kinds of recordings. I'm actually going to go into a Canvas site and show you some examples. And what I want to share with you, first of all, is this recording of a lecture that I did, that I created using Kaltura Capture. And this is a way to do a screen recording and video recording simultaneously. And as you can see here, I've embedded this video content in a page that I've been able to sequence in a module. And as I push play, I've muted my microphone because I don't want to hear myself again. But this is a screen recording and a picture-in-picture of video and of my video and my lecture. You'll also notice that I've embedded a player below, and we have heard from usability from students that they love being able to follow along with the text at the same time. And whether it's for any kind of accommodation or not, students like being able to see that. They can hide the transcript or they can show the transcript. And that's simply a player that you use to embed in Kaltura. I've given clear instructions to the students as to what they need to do prior and what they should be looking for during the video. I'm providing them the good context of what the video is for and what they will need to be doing. So this is using Kaltura Capture. But what's cool about this is that students get to decide what their experience is going to look like. So I can, as a viewer of this video, have it side by side, or I can have it picture in picture, or I can just watch the screen recording. Again, the student gets to actually decide that. When you're doing this recording, you are doing, I can change around the sources. When you're doing a multi-channel recording in Kaltura, and both of those items are being recorded simultaneously, so they're both high quality. And it's just a really great way for the students to optimize what they're able to see. Additionally, you can use the search here to actually find keywords. So if this was a 20-minute recording, which we don't recommend long recordings, but if it was, and at the beginning they knew that the word cognitive was said, I could actually type that word in, and then I can go back to the point where it was said the first time and click, and now I would be able to get to that point in the video and rewatch it. So it's a really powerful way for the students to be able to absorb that material. We have a link to, and we can put that in the chat, a link of how to use this tool. I can't share with you all the information right now of how to do it, but it's pretty easy and it's a very powerful tool. But I want to give one point of clarification here, because this is a video that I have in my media, Susan Tade's media. You have videos that you've created in Kaltura that's in your media or your my media. And I'm bringing that up is because here in the left navigation, you can see the My Media area that's enabled in the left-hand navigation. And when that comes up, you're going to see a list of many, many videos. And these are only belong to me. If you were to click in this course site and you clicked on My Media, you would see your media. So it depends on who's authenticated into the Canvas site as to what would be shown there. If you've never had anything recorded in Kaltura, that would be blank. And actually, the very first time that you log into Kaltura, you have to authorize it. And so would your students. And so clicking authorize kind of syncs that, locks that interface between Kaltura, your Kaltura instance, and your Canvas instance. So again, you do it once, you never have to do it again. So it's really important. Your students will have their own My Media area. And so if you have media assignments and you want them to use the Kaltura media to do the recordings, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a minute, they would have their list of videos that they can do, and they can embed in assignments or replies to you or discussions in that way. I want to also clarify as to what the media gallery is. These are both tools that are in Canvas that are integrated within Canvas, but they're actually Kaltura tools. And so the media gallery is a place where you as the instructor can aggregate media for the course site. And this is course specific. So these are items that I very intentionally added for my students to watch. And as you can see, I have 26 media items in this Canvas site that I am sharing with my students, right? I can also use this area to create playlists. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but this is where the media gallery is. So this is just the collection of videos for the students. But if you're actually creating videos that you want your students to watch in a specific order, for example, here I have created this video lecture and it's embedded in a page. I'm sequencing that with other materials that I'm sharing in this course. So I can then put it in a page. I can click next. And when I click next, it goes to the next item that I have in my course modules. And which gets me to the next piece of information that I want to share with you about another use case that you can use for Kaltura in an asynchronous environment is actually building on course communication. I think I'm actually going to go back to the homepage here to show you one other thing first. But one of the most important aspects of teaching is creating a learning community. And how do you do that when you're not physically together in the same place at the same time? Well, these tools, I think, can help bridge that gap and what I've done here is in your Canvas course site, you can enable announcements to appear across the top of the Canvas site. And here, for example, I've created a very warm welcome to the class. And so even though I'm not physically with my students, I am virtually here welcoming them, telling them what's going to be happening in the course, what the expectations are, what we're doing. And again, I keep muting myself because I don't like to hear myself. But I've also given them clear instructions underneath here. And what's cool about an announcement is I can let the students reply, and I can actually start a conversation so that that community can actually start being built. And so, and I'm going to show you here this in a minute, but wherever you see that little rainbow sprite in the in the media editor, you can actually add media and record media. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. You can see that I've replied to myself numerous times. It's kind of like talking to myself, but I'm the only one in this course. So, but I'm going to show you how to quickly actually add a reply, or wherever you have this, again, the text ribbon, I'm going to show you how to actually use this. So this is how to record using Kaltura embed. By clicking that, I get an interface, and in this interface, it's taking a minute. I'm gonna, this add new area up here, again, this is the My Media area, the same area that I showed you that was in the left navigation. I can actually embed a video that I've already created, or I can add new, and I've got numerous items, and I'm gonna try and get through all of these here in the next 10 minutes. So this is going to be, again, a fire hose of information. I'm going to record with my webcam in the browser. And by clicking that, I get a dialog box and an interface. And I'm actually looking at my camera here. And I can hit the red record button. And when I do that, I have to make sure that I look at my camera. And I'm going to do, I get a countdown. And now I'm doing a welcome to my class, and I'm happy that you're all here, and I'm done now. So I had to hit stop in the middle, and I'm giving now I'm doing a welcome to my class. Okay, and then I have to listen to myself again. So I can re-record it if I don't like what I have just recorded. I can actually use it, which would be embedding it. I can actually download a copy right here. So that's kind of useful as well. But what's cool about it is that I can actually embed it right away, and it'll go right away into my media. So if I click use this, you'll notice that it gives it a name. They're all named video recording, and it's time-stamped. That's not very intuitive. Yes.
I just want to interrupt because there's a couple things here as you're going through this. Students do have access to the same thing that you're seeing here. Yes, they can do this in discussion forums. So they can respond with videos in the discussion forum and record right there and do that. So just
absolutely.
Yep. This is
that's really powerful. And so just so you know, if you enable the My Media in your left navigation, when the students click on the My Media, any of those discussion replies or whatever they've recorded in the My Media is actually going to be there and available to them. So, so I would give this a better name. And for now, I'm just going to call it name. And I'm going to click save and go back to my media page. And the reason I want to quickly, I'm going to go save and embed. While I'm here, I'm going to show you one other item. This little gear tool allows you to decide what kind of player. There's no source video. No, it'll be there in a minute. This is what I have chosen as my default, is so that there would always be a transcript underneath, because I like that. You could allow your students to download copies. I wouldn't want to do that, but some people want students to be able to download. That's, again, your call. And I'm going to click embed.
I just want to highlight what Susan just showed you there is the secret place of where you can get that transcript to show up down below. We don't have the greatest documentation out there about that, but we know students love that.
Right. And so here again, I'm posting another reply to myself, again, talking to myself. You can see that there is something underneath it, but right now there is no transcript because it's still processing. It takes a little while for that to happen. But in this post, you can see there's room for it to happen, and that's where that would be. So wherever that icon is, you as the instructor can just record your webcam and record, or you can also do your students could as well. I want to go through and show you how to do, just super quickly, where I went in and showed you how to add new with your webcam. That is also where you would add new, and you could record using Kaltura Capture. The other tool, and it's a little more sophisticated, and you have to download one time the app for Kaltura Capture, but once you get started using it, it's a very good tool. And again, we sent instructions in the chat. So I would recommend that you go ahead and definitely use that. So course communications is pretty darn important. And I think there's a way that you can asynchronously facilitate it using those kinds of video discussions and video postings and that kind of interaction. So next I want to talk about, I have a question for you as well about how many of you actually, and I'm going to clear our results from before. I want to know how many of you have actually have your students watch videos that you have curated, video contents maybe from YouTube or video content from any other sources. If you, yes or no, if you have your students watch videos, and maybe you do it in a face-to-face environment. Sometimes as you're doing face-to-face instruction, you're going to say, okay, now we're going to take 5 minutes and watch this video. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the fact that the media gallery is a great place to aggregate together video content that you want your students to view. You can certainly embed a video on a page or in a discussion or in an assignment, but you could also then, for students to be able to review later, have all the contents together there in your media gallery. You can also bring in YouTube videos. And you're probably thinking, well, why would I want to do that when I can embed YouTube? I can go in and create a page and I can embed a YouTube video just as easy as I can embed a Kaltura video. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you is that Kaltura allows you to include YouTube videos in your My Media area in here. And although it's, the advantages of doing this is that you are able to share the video in the media gallery if you connect the YouTube video into your My Media. You also have the ability of creating sequenced materials, which I'm going to show you. I have a video that I brought in from YouTube and I created a playlist. And in creating this playlist, and especially in this environment right now where you want to maybe preface the information. This video here is me talking to the class about this video lecture, this video content that I want them to look at and what I want them to be thinking about. The next video is a video that, again, was free on YouTube and available for me to utilize. And I can then have them watch that video and then we can do a recap at the end as well. So it's a way of sequencing that information. The other thing is that because I have created this, I've added this from YouTube, when I look at the video that I've brought into the My Media area, I'm going to show you the fact that I've also got the captions, the transcript at the bottom. And by having the transcript at the bottom, again, the students really like the ability to be able to see that and interact with that and search it for items that that they would like to, I'm trying to get that smaller here, sorry. There we go. So they could search it. But also, you can actually view who's watched the video. And so by looking at this video and by going under actions.
When you do this really quick before you go there, I just want to point out the edit button there too, because some people have asked about editing and all that. And I meant to stop you with the actions when you had your actions on there.
Yeah.
That there's lots of choices there too. So that is one of the places where you will go under to edit. But the analytics are also really cool that Susan's getting to.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot here. Again, we're going back to the fact that this is a fire hose of information. But under the analytics area, you would actually be able to see, and again, this is my sample course doesn't have a lot of information because there's not a lot of people watching. But a player impression is the fact that the video has just been called up. But play means that actually they push the button to play. And how many unique viewers. You can get, there's a lot more information down here. And eventually I'm going to show you as well as you can actually find out which students actually watched videos. And you can find that out if you embed the videos into using the Kaltura embed button, which we showed you how to do, or if the videos are in the media gallery. If you provide a link to the video from Kaltura and just add it as a link on a page, you would not get that information. So it's important to actually, if you want to be able to look at that, that you embed it appropriately in your course site. Okay, so we have a link of information about how to add videos to media galleries. So we'll make sure to share that with you in this chat. But I want to show you another incredibly cool thing about Kaltura. And it sounds like all I think is Kaltura is cool, but it is pretty cool. I want to talk to you about creating some kind of a formative assessment and utilizing the videos that you have within Kaltura that you have created and actually putting in like a video quiz for your students. I'm going back to the same video that I've used before. Sorry about that. But what I've done is I've created a space where if I push play, you'll see this is an in-video quiz. And by creating this, I have created spaces where I'm sharing information with my students, but at key points, asking them questions. And you can see there's a question here, a question here, a question here. If I were to try and fast forward and go there, I have set it up so my students have to watch the video. And I click OK, and I'm going back to where I was. And now I have to be patient and actually pay attention to the video. But
Although you could also show them where they could speed up the video too.
Oh, yes, they could. They could do that right here by going faster. But once they get to the one point, that single point, this is the question that I've asked my students. The students then can answer and select it. And once they've selected it, they move on. Okay. And so, yeah, I can actually go really fast and not have to listen to myself at all. But then you'll see the next kind of question. So this is an in-video quiz. The caveat here is that this is not tied to the gradebook, which really bumps everybody out. Eventually, they want it to be tied to the gradebook, but at this point, it is not. However, it's a really good way for you to actually see whether or not your students are actually understanding, the information and getting everything. And so here again, I'm selecting, I'm submitting, and there we go. I'm going to show you what it looks like to actually create this super quick. What I want to mainly show you is that once you get to the very end of this video and you submit it, you can actually look in the analytics to see who answered what. And I'll show you how to go there right now. So I'm going to go to the My Media area, and I'm going to go to that grid so that you can see how it's set up. And I'm going very quickly. I'm just going to add in, I have so many videos. You can search your My Media area once you get a bunch of them, and you can find the videos. So I want you to make sure that you realize the video, when you create this in-video quiz, first you have to have the video in Kaltura, and then you can create a quiz to wrap over that video. And so this is the video that I created and published and shared with my students. And what I'm going to do is show you now is how I set that up. Again, by going under Actions, and if I go to Launch Editor, this is the editing interface for this in-video quiz. And you can see, as it's loading in, that these are the questions that I've added in. There's 3 or 4 question types. It's like true, false, multiple choice. There's like a reflection point or open answer. And then this is where the students, the final thing where they can submit their videos. Over here, this is the important area in terms of creating the experience you want your students to have. And I have made it so that I do not allow my students to skip forward, okay? And they cannot seek forward, so that they have to watch the video. If you wanted them, you could set it up so that they could do that. Again, and allow them to change their answers, etc. So there's a lot of information in here as to how you would set this up. You can customize what's happening on the interface for the splash screen at the beginning, but this is where you set up the experience your students will actually have. And by adding a question, if I wanted to, I could go here and I could click Add Question, and this is where I come in and see the different kinds of choices. Oops, sorry, I zoomed in. So that I don't want to change that because I don't want to mess up my quiz. So sorry about that. I'm going to go somewhere else and move on. So at this point, we are getting close to the end. So that's a lot quickly about Kaltura. But what I want you to think about, and what Sarah brought up, is that we really are suggesting that if you're in an asynchronous environment, that you chunk your content into segments. And the reason is that students are not sitting down for a 40-minute lecture. If they have 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, I think it's actually easier for students to digest the smaller pieces of information. It's also easier for you to actually record, because once you go in to do the recording and you're trying to you know, get it perfect, which, you know, we can't always be perfect all the time, but it's harder for you to actually recreate, and you don't want to have to do any kind of editing. It makes it easier for you to so think ahead about what those pieces and chunks of information you would do for recording. You know, we've talked very much about the fact that Canvas is easily integrated within, Kaltura is easily integrated within Canvas. So a lot of times people don't even know they're in Kaltura because it's behind it. I told you earlier that you have unlimited space in Kaltura. So, but we have very limited space in Zoom. So by uploading these through Kaltura, through the My Media area, you have unlimited space. You have limited space in Canvas, and technically you could use the media icon in another interface to upload to Canvas, and we discourage that. That's why we're trying to show folks how to use that My Media area as much as possible, because video can be very big and your Canvas site is limited to 4 gigabytes. The video viewing in Kaltura is optimized. It can detect the kind of device that the student has, so it can actually optimize the viewing frame rate, etc., for the students. And we talked about the analytics as well, of being able to, you know, see who's watching and how long they're watching, etc. But Kaltura is limited, you know, it's a technology, it's limited to internet connectivity, and it is not a robust editing tool. You can edit off the beginning and in the end, but you cannot edit in the middle. All the more reasons to have chunks of content so that you can do one chunk and then rest and then do the next chunk. And then, Sarah, quickly, we're going to talk about high flex, synchronous and asynchronous. And I'll just keep sharing.
Yeah, sure. Although if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat for this, because again, this has been a fire hose of information. You're probably like, oh my God, what was that? I'm going to have to. So don't be afraid to go and play. I would suggest playing on a 2-minute video as opposed to a 20-minute video. You know, make something that you could go and sort of test yourself of what you're trying to do. High flex, this is, I don't know where we are in the world of high flex of how you're thinking about things, but there's the synchronous and the asynchronous piece of how this sort of comes all together. And we talked about this at the beginning, that many times you're going to be using Zoom to be having conversations with your students or lecturing your students, and then breaking into small groups or whatever. And so you want to think about those components of where you're going to be flipping back and forth, that maybe all you want to do is record something in Kaltura, send it out to them and say, you need to watch this 10-minute video before you come to our Zoom class, because we're going to be engaging in the content that we did that's in this video, or in the reading, or in whatever. Yeah, and then one of the things that I think is really hard to think about, and yeah, thank you, Susan, next slide here, is that how are you going to deal with the thing? So at the top here, there's a, you know, the moral of the story of what we're trying to say is know what your learning outcome is, know what you're really trying to get through to, and how you're going to engage students with people. So you're doing face-to-face, you know, you may want small groups to do things. Synchronously online, you could probably still do the small groups thing, but you're going to have to think a little bit more about what the technology is that they're going to be doing, because face-to-face, they could use a piece of paper to draw a Venn diagram if they're trying to talk about the differences between 3 major learning theories. But asynchronously, how are they going to do that? Because they're not typically going to be engaging with group members, though they could be. But so, you know, we've set this up here to show that you have some sort of the concept mapping software that maybe they also used synchronously, but you could do the whiteboard and Zoom for that. But, you know, thinking about where you're going to get that software for someone to individually create a Venn diagram. And so just kind of thinking about how people are going to be doing this and the different ways that they're going to be engaging with you, because chances are you're not going to have all of your students all of the time with this remote learning. And so just throwing that out there of ways to think about the stuff with your students. And don't be afraid to talk to your students and your TAs too, to talk to them about this.
Judith just commented that's a great chart for mapping out a teaching plan, which reminds me, Judith, the fact that we will be sharing this presentation file with you in a follow-up email, so you can copy that. I mean, why, let's not recreate the wheel. None of us have the time to do that right now. And so we will be sharing these resources, a link to the recording of this session, as well as we're gonna try and in depth go back to all of your questions. Oh,
I just shared that
she
for
already
the
did it ahead of time.
for y'all. There's the presentation for those of you who feel like you want that right now. You can get access to that. But we will be sharing it later too. So
and actually, if you have view access to that document, make a copy of it and use whatever you want. You know, in the very beginning, we have a slide that talks about how to interact using Zoom. Well, don't recreate it. Steal the one that we made if you want to use it to show your students. You know, it's really important to utilize the resources that are right here. Okay.
And I can stick around for a little bit. It is 3 o'clock, so I want to be honored the fact that, you know, people may need to leave. I can stick around for a little bit to answer any other questions that may come up.
And I'm going to stop the recording.
Oh, and yeah, go ahead. But we will also be sending a